We'll move to presentation on the final design of pollutant reduction project for Beaver Branch Tributary, and I believe that will be Ron Seibert. Thank you.
Adam's even taller than I, and he's going to use this thing too. So you may recall we were here, I think it was in June, gave an overview of the stormwater management program, said we'd be back. We didn't kid, we're here. So again, Adam Willis is the new stormwater engineer. Earlier this evening, we had an open house for the Beaver Branch project. There are still some of the boards over here that were used for that. We'll touch on some of those in this presentation tonight as well. Adam's going to do the bulk of the presentation for this, but I just wanted to summarize briefly for the open house. We did have one couple that came out of the 6 that were invited, Mike and Annette Hampton. Had good discussion with them, good conversations. Some things we want to work out with them on planting. She's got some allergies, and so we're going to work with them the best we can within the project to meet their needs they have as an adjoiner as well. I'm going to let Adam kind of go through the presentation, but I'll be here as well to answer questions.
Thank you. As Ron said, happy to be the new stormwater engineer, and we've gotten the results and Beaver Branch in there at 90% design from our consultant, who is also on if we have any additional questions afterwards. This is, I know in the past we've had some questions, so just a brief overview of the project. The Beaver Branch is, due to that being a separate watershed, so this is the PRP project that we have to do on our own. It's not related to either the Millbrook Marsh or that have been mentioned, or the one that we're buying into at the Penn State Duck Pond. Just kind of further demonstrating that, a little bit of the divide. We're obviously in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. This is the approximate project location that we're settled on below Wyoming, between Wyoming and Kansas Avenue. It's about 350 linear feet. Below that is a former U.S. Fish and Wildlife stream restoration project. So we'd be going from approximately the edge of the tree line there to the culvert under the township road. And just a little farther, the red lines on these, and they are available on those maps, represent the proposed easements. The initial easement in the area was not sufficient, that had existed long demanding presentation. So towards the south, we'll be looking at some additional easement acquisition for that to satisfy the riparian buffer zones. The general design of it starts at a plunge pool and works by increasing the channel sinuosity and armoring the outer edges of the banks to create channel stability. Of note also is there's some existing flooding in homes' backyards above and below and around this section of channel. According to our design reports and from the consultant, all flooding should be contained within this project when it is complete, and it will satisfy our PRP requirements for this with additional extra credit that we may or may not be able to use in future cycles. We don't have information from DEP to speak definitively on that either way. This was one of our renderings from 70%, just a little more of an artistic, includes a cross section there with a low channel and similar for some increased floodplain and riparian buffers. And this kind of goes over the easements. On here, of note, the green easement that there is the original easement the township has from the initial subdivision construction. Through there, along the lower line, you'll see the yellow, orange, and the light blue and orange again are permanent easements for the project. All of the additional, and Ron has a laser pointer, which would be very helpful. So, now Ron, I just saw you use it. Okay. So this was the original subdivision easement. This gray one here will be a temporary easement, as well as the magenta color here, this sliver, and this red are all temporary easements for construction, with these comprising the bulk of the permanent easement acquisition in this area. Of note, this particular parcel right here, I believe according to Ron, is deeded to the original developers. So it's going to be a bit of a unique situation there. So,
yeah, I'll just speak to that briefly. It's one of those ones when the development was done, it was right at a phase line between the two different sections, and it never got platted within a lot that was transferred. So there's a section of land in there that's still owned by the original developer. So we'll be dealing with either them or their heir successors and assigns. Not so different from what we did when we did the Whitehall Road widening project, and we ran a pipe down Spruce and Fir, where we had to work with the heir successor and assign to get that drainage easement. So a little unique in that regard, but that's the right way to do it.
And we're anticipating construction cost at $275,000 to date. Conservatively, I believe the original budgeted was $350,000, so we're refining that a little from that point. Also anticipate easement costs were $75,000. And pending board approval, the project timeline would be a permit submission later this month and approximately a 9-month DEP review time, at which time we would look to begin project bidding pending the permit approval, and with hopefully a construction start summer of 2025 and completion 2025 if timelines hold and contractor availability. So from that, I guess I will put it out for any questions. Obviously, we do have the materials blown up over there, if anybody.
Well, thanks so much, and it's great to meet you this evening, Adam. Thanks for coming and presenting that. Questions on this? We can start over here.
I guess my question is really about the timeline. It's great, the cost, et cetera, but again, when I think about, all right, we're talking late spring, but more like summer if we put that 9-month timeline out there. So any issues with that from the township's perspective, is if this timeline doesn't hold, or is it a couple months maybe either way?
Do you want to handle that, Ron? Or,
Yep.
I will be honest, the PRP project should be slated to be completed by the end of our permit cycle at the end of next year. In the past, we haven't observed a problem if it slips, just based on some of my previous experience with DEP, but obviously we can't speak to that. But with the review timeline, kind of the best we can hope is to move at this point and hope that that we have an expedient review. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, Ron.
No, I'd say that's a pretty good summary right there. The construction timeline, the window really works out well for when we want to try to work within the stream because the base flow is the lowest. Right, so in the summer months, in the spring it continues to run, but in the summer is when we have the least. It's more, respondent to rain events. We don't have a lot of base flow in it, so that's a good time of year for us to be in the waterway working. Adam's right. We may or may not hit the actual deadline under MS4 permit to have it constructed. I feel pretty sure that we'll have it completed in time for our annual report, which is due in September. So, and I think of all the MS4 projects that are out there, we're in that group of people that are probably pretty close to meeting the timeline, and there are others that haven't even thought about what they're going to do yet. So if there would be enforcement action by the department, it's less likely it would be towards those people that are actually working towards getting a project completed in that.
Answer my question perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Anticipated easement cost, what's that number based upon?
So the easement acquisition is going to involve compensating the property owners for acquiring the use of their properties. Part of that would be the cost for an appraiser to value the land, a legal to help us with the recording of the easement, doing the easement agreement, and then also compensating them for the actual appraised value of it. To use comps for that, we went back to the Park Hills Drainage Way project, again in a residential neighborhood where we had to acquire temporary and permanent easements, and then use that to come up with that budgetary estimate. The appraisals will actually inform that actual value for the value that gets offered to the property owners. Both the anticipated construction cost and the anticipated easement cost are less than what is in the budget, either this year's operating budget or next year's, what's in the 5-year CIP that would roll into next year's construction costs. So at this point, at 90%, we're feeling pretty good where we are budget-wise on the project.
And the easement acquisition will be presented to the board in the form of a resolution at a future meeting. So it'll be back in front of you with
Correct.
actual dollar amounts.
As well as once we get to the bidding phase, of course, the project will come back to the Board of Supervisors toward that construction contract too.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? All right.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much. Appreciate your time on that.
Yeah, thank you.